The boardroom fell silent as I stood up, gripping Finley's hand tightly in front of the stunned shareholders. What I thought would be a triumphant reveal of our lesbian love, and her genius quickly turned into the beginning of a nightmare that pitted me against everyone I knew, including the woman I loved most. Just 30 seconds earlier, the air had been thick with the usual corporate tension. I was Journey Thompson, founder and CEO of Lumina Tech, the AI-driven logistics startup that had raised $40 million in Series B only 6 months ago. The investors sitting around the long walnut table had poured in that money on one condition. They wanted a clean leadership story. No complications, no distractions. So for 8 months I had introduced Finley Hayes as my personal assistant, sharp, efficient, always one step ahead. No one knew she was the mind behind the proprietary algorithm that made Lumina possible. No one knew she was the love of my life. I had convinced myself it was the only way. Conservative venture partners from Midwest funds had already walked away from 2 other queer-led startups that year. Keep it professional, I told Finley the night we signed the term sheet. She had smiled that quiet, knowing smile and said, "As long as I'm with you, Journey, I'll play whatever role you need." Now the role was over. The final slide of the quarterly update still glowed on the screen. Our projected revenue doubling again. I had waited until the last possible moment, heart hammering against my ribs. "Before we adjourn," I said, voice steadier than I felt, "there's one more announcement. Finley isn't just my assistant. She's my partner, in life and in this company. Effective immediately, she is co-founder and chief technology officer." I lifted our joined hands like a declaration. Gasps rippled through the room. Richard Harlan, the lead investor from Vanguard Capital, turned beet red. "You're joking. I've never been more serious." Finley squeezed my fingers once, a silent signal we had practiced in the car that morning. Her green eyes met mine, steady, but I could see the flicker of fear she tried to hide. In that instant I knew we had crossed a line there was no uncrossing. The questions came fast and ugly. "How long has this deception been going on? Did you mislead us about the founding team? Is this why the valuation felt inflated?" I answered each one with facts. Finley's patents, her late-night coding sessions, the fact that Lumina would not exist without her. But facts were not what they wanted. They wanted betrayal. By the time security escorted the last muttering executive out, my phone was already exploding. Bloomberg had the story before we reached the elevator. Lumina Tech CEO admits romantic relationship with secret co-founder. The headline stung like a slap. Finley leaned against the mirrored wall, pale. "Journey, what have we done?" I pulled her into my arms right there between floors 37 and 36. "We told the truth. That's what we did." But even as I said it, the knot in my stomach told me truth had a price tag we hadn't calculated yet. That night we drove to my loft in Tribeca in silence. The city lights blurred past the windows while my mind replayed every conversation we'd had about coming out. Finley's conservative parents in Ohio still thought she was traveling for work. My own brother, a minority shareholder, had warned me months ago. "Mixing business and bedroom is suicide, sis." I had laughed it off. Now the laugh was gone. Finley kicked off her heels the moment we stepped inside and sank onto the couch. "They're going to sue us for fraud. You know that, right?" "Let them," I said, pouring us both whiskey with shaking hands. "We'll fight." She looked at me, then really looked, and for the first time I saw doubt in the woman who had never doubted me before. What if fighting costs us everything? The question hung between us like smoke. Outside, the first news van parked across the street, its satellite dish already turning toward our windows. The storm had begun. By morning the storm had become a hurricane. My inbox held 17 new messages from lawyers. Richard Harlan's firm had already filed a motion alleging material misrepresentation and demanding immediate repayment of their entire investment plus damages. The board called an emergency meeting for 10 a.m. I told Finley to stay home, but she refused. "We're in this together," she said, knotting a silk scarf around her neck like armor. We walked into the same boardroom 24 hours after the bombshell. The energy had shifted from shock to hostility. Harlan didn't even wait for the minutes to be read. "You used a romantic relationship to circumvent due diligence. That's fraud, plain and simple." I kept my voice level. Finley contributed every line of code that powers our core product. Her name belongs on the cap table. The only thing I hid was our personal life, not her value. One of the newer investors, a woman from a progressive fund in San Francisco, actually nodded. But the others smelled blood. They wanted a scapegoat and they wanted her out. By noon the motion passed. Finley was suspended pending an independent investigation. My suspension would follow if I didn't comply. Finley didn't cry in the room. She waited until we were in the hallway, then leaned against the cool marble wall and let out a single broken breath. They're erasing me, Journey. 8 months of pretending to fetch your coffee, and now they want to pretend I never existed. I pulled her close, not caring who saw. They can't erase you. I won't let them. That afternoon the first media truck became a fleet. Reporters shouted questions as we left the building. Is this a lesbian affair or a business scam? How long have you been sleeping with your assistant? The words sliced deeper than any lawsuit. Finley kept her head down, but I saw her flinch at assistant. At home we tried to strategize. My phone buzzed nonstop. My brother Derek calling from Chicago, voice tight with fury. You just tanked my investment and our family name. Dad would be ashamed. I hung up on him. Finley's mother left a voicemail that lasted 4 minutes and ended with, "We raised you better than this lifestyle." Finley listened once, then deleted it. That night we lay in bed fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. Maybe I should step back, she whispered. Let them have their scapegoat. The company survives, you keep your job. No, the word came out sharper than I intended. If you step back, we both lose. This is our company. Our life. She turned to me, eyes glistening. Then tell me how we fight without destroying each other. I had no answer. For the first time since we met at that hackathon 3 years ago, I felt the ground shifting under us. The next morning the lawsuit complaint hit the internet. Page after page detailed deceptive practices and personal entanglements. Comment sections filled with speculation about our sex life, our motives, our morality. I watched Finley read them and saw something in her break. I made a decision right then. I would call a press conference. I would tell the whole story. How we fell in love, how we built Lumina together, how fear of prejudice forced us into the shadows. Finley begged me not to. They'll twist it. They'll say I seduced you for power. But I was already reaching for my laptop to draft the statement. Every choice now felt like standing on opposite sides of a chasm, hands still linked but the bridge burning behind us. The press conference lasted 11 minutes and changed everything. I stood at the podium outside Lumina's Soho office, Finley beside me in a simple black dress. Cameras flashed like gunfire. I read the statement I had rewritten 3 times. How we met, how we hid our relationship to secure funding, how Finley's genius was the real engine of the company. I ended with, love is not a conflict of interest. Truth is not fraud. The questions were brutal. Will you resign? Have you considered therapy for this lifestyle? One reporter from a conservative outlet asked Finley directly if she had used our relationship to advance her career. She answered with quiet dignity. I coded the algorithm that saved this company millions. My relationship with Journey is the only thing that kept me going through 18-hour days. That night the internet split in 2. Progressive accounts called us heroes. Conservative ones called us liars. Stock in our publicly traded partners dipped. 2 major clients paused contracts pending review. Then came the accident. We were driving back from a late strategy meeting with our remaining allies when a black SUV swerved into our lane. Paparazzi chasing the story. I yanked the wheel. The car spun, slammed into a guardrail on the FDR. Airbags deployed. Finley's head hit the window. Blood trickled down her temple. At the hospital the doctor said concussion, nothing broken. But the fear in her eyes when she woke up was worse than any injury. I can't do this anymore, she whispered while I held her hand. The company, the hate, the constant cameras, maybe silence was safer. I wanted to argue but the words stuck. My own brother had texted, "Tell your girlfriend to disappear or I'm joining the lawsuit." My mother had left a message asking if I was still her daughter. The price of courage was mounting faster than I could count. The next day the judge denied our motion to dismiss the lawsuit. Discovery would begin immediately. Every email, every text, every late-night Slack message between Finley and me would be fair game. The thought of strangers reading our private, "I love you," made me physically sick. Finley sat on the edge of our bed that evening, still bruised, and said the words I had dreaded. Maybe we should consider a settlement. I walk away quietly. You keep Lumina. We protect what we built. I stared at her. You're asking me to choose the company over you. No, she said softly. I'm asking you to choose us surviving. For the first time I didn't have an answer. The woman who had once charged into every boardroom now felt paralyzed. Outside, another news van idled. Inside, the woman I loved waited for me to decide whether love was worth losing everything else. The settlement offer arrived via courier the next morning. $8.2 million and Finley's complete removal from all company documents. In exchange, the lawsuit vanished. Richard Harlan's signature was bold and final at the bottom. Finley read it twice, then slid the papers across the kitchen island. It's not terrible. We keep the loft, we keep each other. The company lives. Her voice was calm, but her hands trembled. I looked at the woman who had rewritten our entire backend at 3 a.m. while I slept, the woman who had believed in us when no one else did. And what about us? Every time I walk into that building, I'll know I erased you. She reached for my hand. Better erased than destroyed. That afternoon I met Harlan alone. He offered me a drink I didn't take. Smart move, Journey. Pride is expensive. Take the deal and we all move on. I left without signing. When I told Finley, she didn't yell. She simply packed an overnight bag. I need space to think. My parents offered the guest room in Ohio. The words landed like stones. Her parents, the same ones who hadn't spoken to her in 9 months, were now her safe place. I drove her to the airport in silence. At security she turned back once. Don't hate me for wanting to protect what's left. Then she was gone. The loft felt cavernous. I sat on the floor surrounded by patent filings with Finley's name redacted in the settlement draft. My phone lit up with a text from Derek. Smart. Family first. I threw the phone across the room. 3 days later Finley called from Ohio. Her voice was small. The reporters found my parents' house. Mom cried on the porch. Dad won't look at me. She paused. They want me to come home permanently. Say New York ruined me. I closed my eyes. Tell me what you need. I need you to understand why silence might be the only way we both survive this. That night I lay awake replaying every moment we had chosen courage over comfort. The hackathon where we first kissed in the stairwell. The night we decided to hide our relationship to save the company. The boardroom where I had taken her hand and changed everything. Courage had a body count now, Finley's family, my brother, our company's valuation, and possibly us. The deposition day arrived like a funeral. I sat across from 3 lawyers and a court reporter while they asked intimate questions designed to humiliate. Did you ever use company resources for personal dates? How many times did you and Ms. Hayes engage in sexual activity during work hours? I answered truthfully, but each word felt like stripping skin. Finley testified via video from Ohio. She looked thinner, eyes shadowed. When they asked if she felt pressured into the relationship, she answered without hesitation. Journey never pressured me into anything. I loved her then and I love her now. The clip went viral before we left the building. Supporters flooded our socials. Trolls sent death threats. One envelope arrived at the loft containing a printed screenshot of Finley's bruised face from the car accident with the words, "This is on you." I flew to Ohio that same night. Finley met me at a diner outside town. Wearing a hoodie and sunglasses even though it was dark. We sat in a back booth and held hands under the table like teenagers. My dad said if I come back to New York he'll disown me for real, she whispered. Mom just wants me safe. I traced her knuckles. And what do you want? I want the version of us that existed before the boardroom. But I don't know if she still exists. We drove to a quiet park and sat on the hood of the rental car watching stars. For 1 hour the scandal, the lawsuit, the cameras, all of it disappeared. Then my phone rang. The judge had denied the settlement. Trial was set for 3 months away. Finley's shoulders dropped. They're never going to let us win. Back at her parents' house I waited in the car while she went inside. Through the lit window I saw her father gesturing angrily. Her mother cried. When Finley came out her eyes were red. They gave me an ultimatum. Stay here and cut contact with you or leave and never come back. She got in the car, closed the door and said, "Drive." We drove through the night back toward New York. Somewhere in Pennsylvania she fell asleep against my shoulder. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other on hers, thinking about all the ways love could be both salvation and sentence. The morning of the trial I woke to Finley already dressed in the same black suit she had worn the day I announced her as co-founder. "I'm not hiding anymore," she said. "Whatever happens in that courtroom, we face it together." The gallery was packed, reporters, investors, even my brother Derek sitting stony-faced in the third row. Harlan's team presented emails, texts, photos. Our lawyers countered with patent records, financial models proving Finley's contributions exceeded every penny invested. When it was my turn to testify, I looked straight at the judge and said, "I hid our relationship because I was afraid the world would punish us for loving each other. I was right to be afraid. But I was wrong to let fear rewrite Finley's name on our company. She built Lumina. She deserves to be seen." Finley took the stand last. She spoke quietly but clearly. "I never asked Journey to lie for me. I agreed because I loved her and I believed in us. If that makes me fraudulent, then love itself is the crime." The judge recessed for deliberation. We waited in a small conference room, hands clasped so tightly our knuckles went white. 3 hours later the ruling came. The lawsuit was dismissed. The judge cited insufficient evidence of intent to defraud and noted that personal relationships do not automatically invalidate professional contributions. Harlan's team looked like they had swallowed glass. Outside the courthouse the media surged. This time we didn't hide. We stood side by side, fingers intertwined, and answered every question. Yes, we were in love. Yes, we were both founders. Yes, we would keep fighting for the company, for each other, for anyone else forced to choose between truth and survival. That night in our loft we opened a bottle of champagne we had bought the day we closed Series B. Finley rested her head on my shoulder. "We almost lost everything. We almost lost each other," I corrected gently. She kissed me then, soft and certain, the kind of kiss that says we survived the storm. But survival had scars. The company was smaller, our families fractured, the public still watching. Every decision had carried its price. And yet, looking at the woman beside me, the brilliant, brave, beautiful woman I had once hidden, I knew the question that would follow us forever. Was revealing the truth the right choice, or should we have stayed silent to protect our future?